Hey guys, welcome back to the 2018 problem number 4, part B. And we are going to write the static method is Latin, which returns true if a given two-dimensional square array is a Latin square, and otherwise it's going to return false. So what makes a two-dimensional square a Latin square? Well, a couple of things. You have to the first row has to have no duplicate values. So these are examples of Latin squares. So we have nothing here that repeats, nothing here that repeats, nothing here that repeats. Here, the 1 repeats. Here, the 1 repeats. Here, the 1 repeats. So this is not a Latin square because the first row something repeats. So that's the first step. The second, let's erase this or get a different. All values in the first row of the square appear in each row of the square. So 10, 30, 20, 0, 10, 30, 20, 0, 10, 30, 20, 0, 10, 30, 20, 0. They all appear in each row. Here, 7, 8, 9 appears. 1, 2, 3, 3, 1, 2. That's good. The last row doesn't have a 1, 2, 3. And finally, we have all values in the first row of the square appear in each of the column. So 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Here, no good. So 2 doesn't appear here. So that's what makes it a Latin square. Great. So now that we know that, let's see what we have. We have these methods here. So the first one is public static Boolean has all values. It takes a single dimensional array and it takes another one, so it takes 2 of them, and it returns true if and only if every value in the array 1 appears in array 2. So before I go on, we know that a two-dimensional array is just a full list of one-dimensional arrays put together. So it's just one-dimensional arrays. So this is ARR, let's just say 1, and this is ARR 2, and so on. In other words, 0, 1, let's keep this to be 1. ARR 1, 2, ARR 1 when we get to row 4. And then we have here another method that is called contains duplicate, and it takes one-dimensional arrays and it checks to see if any of the numbers repeat. So it returns true if the single-dimensional array contains any duplicate. Otherwise, it returns false. Great. One last method that we have was the method from part A. So these are our methods. They place them all in a different page for you. So we also have the public static int get column. Now remember to constantly look at what it takes as its parameters. So let's begin. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take care of the yellow highlight. The first row has no duplicate values. So let's take a look at the question. It's going to take a two-dimensional array called square, and it's going to return a Boolean. Okay, so we want to make sure that it is a Latin square. So first thing I'm going to say is if contains duplicate, and then here I know that contains duplicate takes a single dimensional array, and I'm going to put square 0. And the reason why I did that was because the question said, or the yellow part says, the first row has no duplicate values. So we know that when we put a 0 in here, it refers to the first row. Now, yes, you can do that. If you want to refer to a two-dimensional array in terms of one arrays, you can just do what I just did here. So if it does contain a duplicate, then it's not a Latin square, so you want to return false here. Okay? So we're going to do all the false first. So the next part is, so that's all for that. The next part is the purple. All values in the first row of the square appear in each row of the square. All values appear all values in the first row of the square appear in each row of the square. So I have this guy here has all values, and it takes single dimensional arrays. So I'm going to write here, if does not has all values, and then I'm going to have square 0 as my first parameter, and then I need to check this with each, I need to check this guy. So this is square 0, this is square 1, square 2, and so on. I need to check this guy with each one. So this is going to be, so if I have to go through each one, I obviously need a for loop. So I'm just going to write down square, and then I can just call him R, because for rows. So I'm going to go for, now obviously I would not do 0. So int R equals 1. R is less than square dot length R plus plus. So if it doesn't, then we're going to return false. Remember, has all values tells you if all the values in the first row appear in each other row. So this is how you do that. Okay, and we have one more to take care of, and then we are done. And that's this guy here. All values in the first row of the square appear in each column of this square. So I would need to make sure that all values in the first row of the square, these guys here, okay, they appear in every column. So what I did in part A was I had a method that was able to access all of these numbers in any given column. Do you guys remember? In part A, we have a method. It was called, let me go this way, sorry. Here are my methods. The highlighted one. Public static int get column, and it's going to return a one-dimensional array. It's going to take a two-dimensional array. Well, I do know a two-dimensional array, and the two-dimensional array is square. And you're going to talk about each column. It has to check every column. So let's do that part here. I'll do it right here, actually. The last part is if, and then we have does not has all values again. Now remember, it takes has all values takes 1, 2 parameters. So the first one is square 0, because that's an array of the first row, comma, and then here, because I don't have room, I'm going to put get column. It takes a two-dimensional array, so I'm going to say let it take square, and it knows that it's two-dimensional, so you don't have to do any of this stuff. Okay, and then I'm going to, let's say C for column. It has to go through every column, so anytime you have to go through everything, you're going to need a for loop. So for int C equals 0, C is less than the square 0, the amount of columns, C++. And that would make it go. So if any of these doesn't have the values, then we're going to return false. And then you're going to close off all of those statements that we wrote, and then at the very end, we're going to say otherwise return true. So I think the takeaway is that you can refer to a two-dimensional array and access every row as a single array by using this kind of method. So square 0, square 1, and so on. So that's how you do this problem. I hope that was helpful, but I just wanted to show one last thing. If you try to do a two-dimensional array for contains duplicate, that's not going to work because for int r equals 0, r is less than this, and you start going. What this does here is this accesses every single cell. So it's like, what am I supposed to do with this number? If contains duplicate, even though we know that duplicate can only take arrays. So you have to really use these, or you're going to have to create a method, or not use the method and come up with a different tactic. But I think they want you to use the method. So it doesn't make sense to do a double for loop for this two-dimensional array, even though for most two-dimensional arrays we use 2 for loops. Okay, so that was that. Have a good day.